1, 2, 3.
Minutes approved brings us to public comment. Mr. Clerk, please set your clock.
The first public comment is from Monica Williams. Dear Council, Mayor, and community members, seller beware, the grift, scam, or confidence game. The word grifter is a noun form of the word grift, which means obtaining money or property illicitly as in a confidence game. The simplest way to describe a grifter is a con artist. Con artists are often so good that you never see them coming or realize you are a target of a long con. Examples of these deceptions could be lying, cheating, having funds diverted to various accounts, or other bait and switch scenarios and shenanigans meant to deceive. A confidence game or con game is when a grifter gains the confidence of their victim and then swindles them out of money and or valuable property and assets. Grifters often prey on those at their weakest moments, manipulating real human emotions in devious ways. A grifter craves control of the situation. Grifters often exhibit a dark triad of characteristics: lack of empathy, emotionless narcissism, entitlement, and Machiavellian human manipulation while lacking a personal moral code. Grifters do not pursue ordinary channels. Grifters keep out of the legitimate channels of commerce and resort to unique and extraordinary practices. All the big grifters were at work in the sideshow where the easy mark's thrown. In a grift, grifters often use positions of legitimacy to get the job done. The phrase grift, greed, and corruption is often assigned to corrupt politicians caught in grift. Grifting, scamming, and swindling are all forms of fraud. You can spot a grifter if you carefully consider their actions. A grifter may attempt to pressure you into taking action again after a stall, which does not give one enough time to fully consider the offer or discuss it with others that you trust. It's from Monica Williams, Pontiac, and Incubator.
Thank you, Professor, for your answer. The next question is from Monica Williams, who asks, could you expand on how the state might work collaboratively with entrepreneurs and communities and how design thinking plays a role?
Thank you for that question. In fact, my institute is in a design school at University College London, the Bartlett School for the Built Environment, which is increasingly interested in issues of sustainability, prosperity, purpose, and bringing a design thinking lens to it. So again, question is very welcome. I think there's several things one could say. One is the notion that markets are outcomes, as I began my lecture with. They're outcomes of how we govern organizations. That is a design challenge, right? That's how do we design a public organization? Instead of just saying we need public money, the question is, how do we actually design our instruments to actually achieve these public objectives? And that itself is a design issue because unfortunately we have often very static, linear, top-down design structures, but also design structures that are not participatory.
Accordingly, in connection with Council's approved resolution on March 9th, there is not a location available for the Council representative to attend the closing.
Thank you. I wanted the general public to know that the resolution that we passed to be notified of the closing did not happen. I wanted to let my Pontiac City Council colleagues know that there was no communication given to me from the mayor of a closing date or a closing time. As of 5 o'clock, I did receive an update picture and image that says that the deal is currently closed and they have a special town hall meeting that they will be having at 1 o'clock tomorrow without the council.
Conversation in front of 1,000 people, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
I'm calling Bob right now.
So there ain't enough people who can get in on it, okay, that can add to it. And they can add, I'll put it this way, Jim. If you got this and you're telling me I'm not adding anything, and I don't know why you keep telling me to listen to people have add. I don't want nothing added. Exactly how you got it. Because everyone has a frame of reference. Sometimes they don't. And that may be, but they won't be saying anything then. Okay,
Okay.
let me ask you this.
Okay,
What frame
so-
of reference would I have this morning? After you told me, what frame of reference have I got? And that's what I want you to understand. What frame of reference?
You know that there's a con that went on. And all I've done is given you some contextual
I
elements
know, but
to
I'd like
draw.
to do it on my
to-
own.
Well, you couldn't if you didn't know. You see?
And parks are such an important part of the situation we find ourselves in with the pandemic and so forth and so on.
True. Oh,
People
definitely.
don't recognize that, generally speaking, and I think that's an important element, along with the fact that trails and Katha, last Tuesday night, the PIREC got voted down.
The what?
The
The
Pontiac Youth
Oh, the
Recreation Center got
Oh.
voted down. So
They
it's
got- So they're not gonna buy the building?
that's correct.
Right.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, we have another way of implementing and pulling forth good design
Mhm.
on behalf of our youth. And parks and
What a
such,
goal.
and trails and such are such a big part of that possibility thinking that I think we'd be in a very good place right now to be talking about those kinds of things from the standpoint of what does good design do that bad design tries to address.
Mhm.
And from our point of view, from a designer's point of view, and an ecosystem's point of view, the city presents that wonderful backdrop. In addition, the surrounding natural areas enhance that natural backdrop. So given that they don't have a plan that I'm aware of in this moment for what is to become of the dollars and or where that would land, with the exception, there was some comment made that it might end up at United Shore at their building up that they bought from US Soccer. And that could be good.
The
But
youth center?
The youth center could end up locating up at the United Shore facility because they bought the US Soccer. And I know soccer is an important element, but I'm not sure that that addresses the kind of recreational, design elements that could be incorporated. But we think it has a good chance to be downtown. And I think maybe we've always talked about it at the Phoenix Center and so forth and so on. That might be a timely transitional point to engage. And we had some additional conversations regarding a library annex.
Mhm.
Technology that's in the buildings in Ottawa Towers. And I still think that's a viable concept, but if you put all of those things together and are talking about finding funding, you have a much stronger point of finding the appropriate funding for such an endeavor.
Mhm.
So we're thinking this is, kind of the tent poles for what could be some valued proposition on behalf of youth, but most importantly on behalf of the city. And, we've been advocating to get our youth downtown for several years and to no avail for the most part. I think it's just crucial. I think the reason we don't have anybody downtown is because no one had any connections to their downtown
Mhm.
for the last 10, 20, maybe 30 years. And if you're not getting those as a young person, if you're not getting the signals and the engagement opportunities to have an emotional connection, you're not going to be there. I mean, just alone, 60% of our college graduates, our best and brightest as they're called, leave the state. 60%, well, 60%, okay, we got 40% left to choose from. And yet
Mhm.
we still don't have our young people tied emotionally to their city, and they drift, and inappropriately so. So I think this is, pointing out that some effort should be made to engage them. And what better than if it were done with a recreation engagement or a makerspace or a makerspace library recreation kind of central drawing card for the city, so that they begin to have some engagement and memories that are treasured, that give them some sense that perhaps Pontiac is the place to live as opposed to leave. So do you have anything on the
Well, I think you bring up some good points for the big deterrent that I see is the fact that it's a downtown, and parking and just being, feeling safe, parents wanting their kids to be in a place where there's some safety. And, when you can't park easily, it's going to be a problem on a daily for a regular operation. It's going to be a problem. When you in something like that, a youth center or community center even, you have to have adequate parking. You have to have a handle on that parking. And now that the city doesn't even own the parking, it just would be extremely problematic to put that in that complex, unless they figured out a way to make that work. But you have to have access to free parking. For a youth center, you're dealing with low-income people who are going to be dropping kids off, and you cannot expect them to be paying to go park a car and pick up their kids. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, we agree.
So that would be the detriment to it. Everything you said would be certainly, they would be good things, but it would just, the parking and the accessibility of downtown, the safety of downtown would be the downturns.
Mm-hmm. Well, the city still owns the parking, the Phoenix Center, so.
Conservancy that I mentioned earlier, and from there went on to start working on my PhD. So now I'm working on my dissertation, which is looking at the application of design thinking in the planning field to address local and regional transportation issues. And so in this context, design thinking, is this kind of stepwise, iterative process for developing innovative solutions. It starts with empathizing and really understanding user needs first, and then using that information to, throughout the rest of the process to define and frame your problem, to ideate, to develop prototypes, and to test and refine those solutions. So first, in the first top blue box, I thought it might be helpful just to kind of, let's step back and think about traditional transportation planning processes and how they work. So typically planners identify projects and policies to improve transportation challenges, and input is given from the public in a few ways, typically, either through public hearings and open houses, which are very formal meetings where individuals attend and kind of can give their input on a proposal. And with public hearings and review and comment periods, these are done to meet federal requirements for community engagement. But a lot of times the planners are saying, here's what we've come up with, right? What do you think? And so often the proposed ideas really don't change very much, regardless of the input that they get from the public. So then moving on to the first gray box, there are limitations of only using quantitative data as well in the planning process. These statistics and numbers, don't really capture people's everyday lived experiences. And so these stories and narratives really help illuminate the patterns and trends that we see in the data. And I think are a very important component of engagement and the planning, and, an important planning input into the process as well. So the focus of my dissertation research is learning what design thinking can bring to the table. The application of design thinking in the transportation field is really an emerging practice, and Monica and Jim are one of the early adopters, along with a few other organizations across the country. And so my preliminary hypothesis is I think that design thinking really does hold potential. It has been used in other fields to help facilitate more diverse and inclusive public engagement, like, for example, in the public health field. And so I'll be studying, the work of the Pontiac Incubator, and I'm also looking at some local and regional organizations on the West Coast and elsewhere. And I really want to learn, how they're applying design thinking to address transportation issues to inform transportation decisions. What are those outcomes of using this approach and how they can be assessed? And so I think we're going to see this big reimagining of our transportation system. I think we acknowledge the harms that dividing communities played, in building out these large highway systems. And we obviously, with climate change, we need to think about creating more sustainable transportation systems and offering, more carbon friendly options, and to reduce single occupancy vehicle driving and commuting. And so then the pandemic threw a wrench into all of this too. And it'll be interesting to see, as Jen mentioned, will teleworking remain, after the pandemic eases? I think that there's a lot of potential there too. But another interesting thing that happened during the pandemic was a lot of tactical urbanism, where people really, we just very quickly reworked our streets. That in a lot of communities, they reduced the number of lanes available to car traffic and either added bike lanes or were expanding sidewalks so that then retailers and restaurants could do outdoor seating and outdoor shopping. And so you just saw this kind of shifting of space away from cars to people and pedestrians and bikes.
Which sort of opens up the purpose bucket a lot, right? If we are doing this for multiple reasons. So, and certainly in a place where you're talking about opening up people to the out of doors, and that's a direct response to what happened last year. And that's kind of what they're getting at, is how do we, the funds that are coming, the America's Rescue Plan funds that will be here very soon, actually, its intent is recovery. And so you can think of this and building outdoor spaces and bringing ways for people to come together as recovery, right? All the things we talked about, or I've started talking about, I didn't go very far, but talking about mental health and social recovery, all of that is tied to it, right? This is a health and wellness kind of scenario, really, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I absolutely think it will fit into the bucket. Now, the challenge for us always is getting access to the bucket and making sure that, we're standing in line in the right line at the right time. And there's some battles going on about how much money Pontiac the city gets. The county is getting $250 million, which is a lot of money. And I know they're holding hearings to talk to people about what to do with that money. So it would be a good place to start to talk about, how do we do this? How do we make an outdoor place that makes sense for the people, right, to recover as we go through this change that's come about because of the virus, because of what happened last year. There's no question that we're changed people.
Right.
The community needs to change as well.
Absolutely.
There's also a big commitment to Pontiac from the county level. It's a really good time to ask for money. I don't know what the city will end up, and even if the city gets $30 million, it will be challenging to get everyone to agree on how to spend it. Right. I mean, it's always going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Trying to do anything in the city. You guys know this more than I do, I'm sure, but to make a big change in the street. I was thinking about, you can do small projects. But what if you actually had a map that showed Saginaw, one of your beautiful diagrams, with a whole lot of small projects, and each one of those projects belong to one of the stakeholder groups or companies in the city. Right? So whether, each one of those individual placemaking things, the small project, maybe this one here is a community garden, and that one's a fountain, and that one's a thing to do. I'm thinking about hot spots. So what if you had park-like places to sit that looked like trees, but maybe they were not even real trees. Maybe they had goats that sucked garbage. I don't know. But ways for people to sit down and get access to a hot spot right there downtown while they're walking around. Maybe there's, you can sort of tie in a little bit of technology, the solar power zones, where you can plug in and charge or sit under the light or, whatever, just up. You can sort of tie in a little bit of technology, the solar power zones, where you can plug in and charge or sit under the light or, whatever, just up and down the street. And draw there's so many companies now around Pontiac, and they all seem to want to do something. Everybody could own a piece. or be responsible for a piece. Kind of like you do your cleanup on the highway, you put your company sign there. This display brought to you by United Shore Mortgage. This block brought to you by United Shore Mortgage. This block brought to you by Amazon.
Here we have something here just on that.
Their summer youth program.
Senator.
Graphic.
This is our downtown Pontiac youth summer program graphic that we have pushed for about 4 years.
Oh, nice.
And I think it's finally meeting its moment. But we have if we were to do a walkable city experience for kids.
From City Hall down past the library, down into the downtown, and have kids learn a little bit about civics, have kids learn a little bit about what a library offers in terms of interesting things for them, as opposed to, hey, we have interesting things. And then real world opportunities to engage with businessmen and entrepreneurs and so forth and so on.
Right. The things that will bring the adults downtown, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They bring their kid. The kids say, "Come down, look at my projects," and then you may have a city functioning from the bottom up, as opposed to these other catastrophes we've discussed of top-down thinking.
Yeah, and there's so much technology. So you could take your fountain, could be connected, right, as part of a system that is also clean, fresh drinking water. That is also, you can really make cool stuff out of that. Make it part of a.
Yes, we have one at the
across the street that they put a tree in.
Yeah, it's just the key. He done stuff for me. I just made a phone call and he made it happen.
Set us to defending the demolition. Okay, they were going to demolish it. And of course, the question asked is, the Phoenix Center should be torn down. Their premise was, and this comes from the Oakland County executive, who kind of sucked the air out of this place for 2 decades. Mm-hmm. The thought was, because they bought lot 9, that big parking lot over there, which is about 5 acres in downtown Pontiac, that wouldn't it be interesting if we could make a case that we had to destroy the Phoenix Center because it was stopping people from finding Pontiac. I want you to think about that for a second. The city's been here for 150 years, but you couldn't find it because the Phoenix Center was built. Okay. Even though the loop,
you couldn't find this downtown.
That was their argument.
That was their argument for destroying it.
And I guess so. Our impetus was to go out and tell placemakers about the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, and raise the alarm. Like Paul Revere, the funds are coming, placemakers, wake up. We could impact probably a small percentage of these, but small things are so powerful that you don't need, 99% of it can go to waste, and that 1% will break the bank for good.
Right.
So we're trying to get all the
we're on the
little
lookout
shovels.
for the grifters, though, right?
We haven't seen many, but maybe at the conference
Well, the money hasn't arrived yet.
The grifters? Yeah. Right
Believe
now,
me, they'll be there.
Well, right now what's
Sure.
happening is, so if you have like an engineering firm, you're learning everything about this and you're calling your city clients and you're saying, hey, that project for a nuclear plant, let's do it now. So salespeople are very oriented towards this.
So this is very similar to op zone funding, opportunity zone funding, very similar. And almost all of the money went to big real estate developments, but it was intended to go to neighborhoods. Whoops.
And we wanted to do, I was in Pontiac already in the historical section, and I loved the community that was before William Durant opened GM. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he started Oakland Motor Car. And this was the building.
Wow.
5 floors.
Oh my God! This was going to be like the bohemian chic of places.
Could be done and should be done to make it more friendly for patrons and kids. For example, this structure here in the middle used to be a beautiful fountain that flowed, and we did maintenance to keep it going. As you see now, they have a weeping cherry here, but it would be absolutely wonderful to have it back. A few previous administrations thought that it was a eyesore because they said it would cause problems with vagrants hanging around the pond and such. But I beg to differ. If you go to any urban cities, major cities, they have different kind of water features and ponds that really bring the city to life and bring the parks to life and bring creativity, and it's a nice place for families to gather.
Director of the Citizens District Council, Community Citizens District Council for all of the districts. So what I do.
It looks brand new.
It is. It's only like, I believe it's 4 years old, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 5.
It was supposed to be in Pontiac.
Adjacent to us over here is Oakland University.
Community.
Because it doesn't respond. Then you said something else, I thought.
Yeah, the nature abhors a vacuum.
Right.
It will fill.
It will, yeah.
It just won't be with community.
Oh. Well, you have a green city. But
well,
No, that could be one outcome, but then hyper gentrification would be the other.
There's definitely what's going to happen. Definitely.
Gentrification.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
See, they don't recognize that this isn't forever, but it is to them because that's how it's been forever. Mm-hmm. But nothing's forever.
So at some point, this space is gonna be like an uber rich nightclub.
Absolutely.
And there'll be some people here like drinking
marijuana,
voluntary.
To all of them, I have that relationship, but the people do not understand the power of a CDC and how wide-ranging it is, other than just the block grant funds.
He's right.
You shared that with me, but like I said, the reason I called this body together is so that y'all can say what I've been saying all the time. I've got the voice, and I've used my voice for over 40 years. That's why I can go to council people and ask for information and get it. But the people do not understand the power of a CDC and how wide-ranging it is, other than just the block grant funds.
Some of my
we have the ability to change the mindset of not only council, but the mayor, if we got more than one or two voices speaking toward that end.
Exactly.
Because we get to control our own destiny. They don't control our destiny. They're there for us. They're our lords. These are our attorneys.
How the world works. Add a little creativity and imagination to the equation, and we might be able to figure our way out of the dynamic problems that we're facing. So we're really excited about that K-12 piece. And the pandemic just outed, I hate to say this, outed education. Not well, I might add. But I think it's from the instructional model, not from the technology sense. But if you're trying to corral a group of young people, and if you have them in the classroom, that's pretty easy to do. But if you don't have them in the classroom, you get results like 1 in 5 showed up for remote learning. 1 in 5. So it never had a chance to be successful because only 1 in 5 showed up. Anyone else have any thoughts along those lines?
I see Anita Barksdale is here. Hi, Anita.
Hi, thanks for the invite. I've been listening to the conversation. It's pretty, it's igniting. I will say that. I'm glad I joined as well because I was listening to some of the ideas and thoughts that that Autumn was talking about as well, and then where my brain went with a lot of the work that needs to be done. Starting.
Oops, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
You were running a parent group at one point. when the
Yeah, so-
pandemic first started. Are you still?
Yeah, so I kind of wear two hats. The first one, I'm a nurse at St. Joseph Mercy Oakland, and I work with trauma services, and we work to pretty much make safety easy for our communities. And
Mhm.
part of that making safety easy is working with the community to figure out how can we mitigate some of these risk factors for injury. So safe streets, walkable streets, bikeable streets. We're actually starting to work with Oakland County to see what that looks like.
Wow.
We've identified a school who we've done a bike rodeo with, so we want to go back and visit them and make the program a more sustainable program where the students at that school develop healthy habits that lead into adulthood, but a lot of them aren't experiencing those healthy habits right now. So just offering that into their toolbox, and part of that would be looking at your streets, looking at your community for safety, for and then getting them to think twice. We got a program called Think First, but thinking twice about their choices, their healthy choices for injury prevention, choices for healthy living, and things like that. So like I said, we've identified the school. We want the kids to help us figure out what does your walkable community and what does your bikeable community look like. And that includes, your food sources, that includes your other things that you need to live. So we talk with the kids about, what do you need to live? And the first thing that comes to mind is food. The second thing that comes to mind is family. So, are you in a neighborhood that feels like family? If you walk your neighborhood, do you feel safe enough where, that you can identify a safe house in your neighborhood? Because we used to have stuff like that. So identifying those safe houses in your neighborhood. But, we did a walk of the community to figure out where things were located. And if I wanted to go find a banana or an apple or something like that, is that within this is excellent. I just copied that actually, if you don't mind, but
Not at all.
having the 15 minute, bike ride or a 10-minute walk, are your resources within your area? And then is it safe to do that in your area? So that's one of the things the students spoke up about too. I don't feel safe walking in that area. So we gave them some tools, options, what they can do to help, but also ask them, what do you feel you need to do what do you feel you need to be safe in that area? What do you feel that you need to have in that area to be able to bike that area? So that's kind of what we're working on right now. But this has been a super interesting conversation. I'm just absorbing a lot of it.
Can we help you, Anita? How can we help you, and can we get you involved in the event that day? Have some kind of...
Yeah, that would be excellent. Actually, that would be excellent. I was just trying to figure, trying to just kind of hone in on what we could do to work together to offer, what we needed to pretty much figure out what parking day was, and then
you just described it. Not only did you describe it, you took it to a place
Evolution
that we wanted to go to, which is from downtown to the neighborhood. So we're seeing this going from down Pike Street, from Saginaw west up to Lori's facility, and then into the community.
And maybe to Washington School. Maybe Megan could speak to that.
Exactly. So I'm sure we can accommodate, if we have the time to do a little programming thoughts, something that would be exciting, and you're making the kids the focus of the dynamic in terms of design. I think that's just outstanding. It's just the way it should be.
Can I chime in on this real quick?
Yeah.
So this sounds like something that we could partner on.
Yes.
Our
definitely,
program,
definitely.
so
super
our
excited
program
about that.
is like, we are expanding.
Devin, do you feel like talking about it? You want me to try? Putting him on the spot, sorry. But Devin and his wife Erin have always been really big into the possibilities for Pokémon of our downtown and creating walkability and those kind of things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, more than just understanding that it's one of the few things naturally getting people to walk around downtown is, oh, okay, this camera here, is that it's this silly game that hundreds of millions of people like to play, and it's not being capitalized on. That's one of the only things getting people to actually interact with the downtown area, yeah. And that there aren't any businesses hospitable to people who are doing that, who are just casually traversing the area. So just figuring out how to get places to be more accommodating for people who are doing that, and to capitalize on the bits of traffic that do come down here. Because what I notice is the exact opposite, is that there's sort of an ostracizing like vibe to it for a lot of people when they sort of just disregard that, oh, that's all they're doing, is they're just playing that game as they walk down. And it could be a hot day and someone could want something to drink, and a store that would sell something to drink to somebody is closed because reasons, I don't know, because they don't respect that the traffic that is here it would be here for any reason other than solely the purpose of that business, I suppose.
Christine, if I've put the mural that we're using here, this is the digital sort of design framework that we use, that we've been using in the background. And you can see there's vision and game plan. And this is our journey map, which is just to symbolize that we're walking down a road here and nobody has all the answers, and we're working in the best fashion we can to get some creative possibilities in the face of these really awful and
challenges.
We were just processing this Washington Post article that published September 4th, 2021. And do I have it on the board yet? It's called Climate Disasters Will Strain Our Mental Health System. It's Time to Adapt.
That would probably be correct.
Is Thomas on?
Yeah, well, the community definitely needs to have input. We were at the city council meeting last night, and the council members were highly upset because they were saying that they demand that the community be involved in the decisions that are going to be made, allocate the funding. So we were glad to hear that. So they're planning on meeting with anybody who's interested in tabling that. So next week when they had a city council meeting, I think it'd be a good idea for a bunch of us to be there, because the mayor literally is trying to make allocations of the money to what she wants it to go to, and they said no.
Right.
It's a citizen to come first. So it's a citizens first thing. That's number one. And number two, we should be there so that we can have some input.
Good morning, everyone. It's good afternoon now, I guess. It's a little afternoon. Really great to be here. I really admire and appreciate a lot of the innovative work that Jim and Monica are doing. And this is an exciting event. It's really important that we continue to make downtown areas more pedestrian friendly.
To support walkable communities, to support our downtown businesses, and appreciate all of you being a part of this virtually today, and really appreciate again the great work that Jim and Monica have been doing to pull this event together year after year.
I need you to take that release, and then I need you to come back to it, or I need you to be a good teammate, or I need to be a better teammate and take the release from you when I can identify that it's heavy on me, right? So it's are too, you know.
Yeah,
exactly. You know what I'm saying? But because you have this consistent roadmap, you can always go back and say that if whatever came out of the conclusion of my results, do I need to go back to my hearing round? Do I need to reactivate my participation?
Oh man, we're gonna have fun. And then you can start with vision. What's our core intentions of parking day?
Yeah, I teach global cities. This is a course, it's a class at Oakland University. Students one of their assignments is to come down to Pontiac and do a cityscape or landscape analysis.
Bonnie was talking about storytelling. There's a lot of identified places on the Clinton River Trail, and it's actually, you're probably aware, all of you are aware, it's been granted a $600,000 award from the Ralph C. Wilson.
And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about design thinking and how it can be used to address transportation challenges. So first I'll just give a little bit of background.
So we need that voice. We need this
and the process of learning from lived experiences. And so there is that missed opportunity to really learn from the lived experiences before generating the ideas and the solutions. So design thinking, which Monica has been talking about a little bit, is the focus of my dissertation. So I'm looking at whether or not design thinking might be a better way to involve the public in the transportation planning process because it focuses on lived experiences. And so design thinking is defined as a human-centered approach to problem solving, creativity, and innovation. And specifically, I'm looking at the potential that design thinking holds as a public engagement tool. And so that's why I'm here in Pontiac today to study what the Incubator has done in Pontiac and how they're using design thinking to engage with the greater community. So
adopting the bus stop with SMART for several months, but it required something much deeper than just a cleaning responsibility. We have to actually solve the problem from a design point of view. When we spoke on Monday, there was a suggestion that there was a possibility of finding some funds within the ARPA proposition that would address that in the depth that is necessary to solve the problem. Rather than just a volunteer.
I'm ready to be a part of whatever. You've got 3 more months with me.
No,
3 more months.
Basically where the way we should take it from. And we're trying to state those things.
Such a multicultural environment.
I'm not getting I'm not getting it. Everything back and forth. I just want to find a solution.
What's our message?
So our message is to find out, we want to bring a better solution for this transportation problem in downtown Pontiac. We want to take the resources that we have and build something that people will be confident in and comfortable with, and actually will help be part of the problem as we pull in the rest of the community and the rest of the environment. Right, so to build the new and I think the state government would be delighted to be a part of the project.
You know, and then you're not clean, they're not cleaning it up.
They go to training.
Riding the bus and just all the people all junky and everything. They go to like you're not all classy down here. Some of us do work and everything, take care of business.
Every meeting I tried to come hoping that it will be changed. And I don't know what the reasoning behind this is. So I'm going to recognize Mr. Gibb and then we can move on. It's on the agenda for next week, I guess.
So just briefly, Council President, thank you. Mr. Gustafson and quite frankly, I trying to help him out. It is a little bit procedural in how this is being handled. And so because the space was historically recognized as a park space before the city took ownership of it, and because the city obtained grant funding under that definition, it's included in the review that the plan will have with not only the city but with the DNR. And so the space is the space, and so it has to be designated something because of the history of it. And so in recognizing the action that you took last year, Mr. Gustafson and his good staff and working with public comment review has said, well, then it doesn't need to be determined a park. So in the future, looking for grant money for that, it wouldn't be deemed a park under the plan. It would be a civic space, which I know sounds like semantics, but there is one possible solution, is because there was some direct public comment regarding the words that I know are causing a little bit of anxiety, which is the KaBoom grant that's references playground equipment, because that's a direct public comment, then that language can be amended from the plan. The challenge with removing it altogether is because it's historically utilized under the definition of a Part 4 grant, and it's been identified as a city asset, it really needs to be designated as something. And I think Attorney Sharp is frustrated, I know, but kind of going there, that the plan seeks a designation. In this case, it would just be a general designation of the civic space. Otherwise, that particular asset that's been used in the past for grant funding there would be a hole in the plan. It just would be, and so there has to be some type of placeholder label over that particular spot. And so council were inclined to say, well, let's remove the language that says playground equipment, direct public comment, but it has to be designated something. And I know it sounds practical, but it's just a procedural level.
This Mr. Gibb, as your economic development person, we need to give the money back to KaBoom. If it has to come out of the city council budget, so be it. Let's give the money back to KaBoom, eliminate it from the plan, so we can vote on this next week.
Well, my suggestion is to vote on it tonight. I mean, why?
What I'm saying is, tonight the vote will not be the same, Councilwoman.
It will be the same next week, Mr. President. When a person show you who they are, believe them. It's been going on at the Clearwater for years. They have no intentions of thinking. I'm just an honest person. You know, when a person hits you a couple times, I think you're kind of getting a message here. They're not going to do anything about this. It's going to be the same argument this time, same channel, same state next week. So I would just vote on tonight, let it fall, let it fall.
Mr. President?
Councilwoman Sharansky?
Yeah, I've had my hand up for quite a while.
I can't see it. I'm sorry.
If you remove playground equipment, they should not be able to count that 500 feet buffer. And they intend to count that 500-foot buffer. But if you remove playground equipment, which is Kathalee James' proposal, by the way, it is already an entertainment space. If you remove playground, they should not be counting that 500-foot buffer. And I really would like to pass this park plan except for this issue. Thank you.
Councilwoman Sharansky, all they need to do is eliminate it. We can give the money back to KaBoom, and we can go forward. The issue, the last master plan did not have Hidden River Park designated as a park. That's where the council flowed out of. When they told us about the KaBoom grant, I asked them about park designation. They said, oh no, this is not going to make it a park. Then 2 months later, they came with this. So much like the MDOT project, I've been lied to get to these points. And then when I try to rectify the situations, they tell me all of these hurdles are in place where they can't move it. They are willing to.
I want to take a picture, but it'll be my last. A water fountain.
It was a water feature. It needs a new sculpture.
We can tear this up so much. We can put light on there and then like put color.
Buffers that were already established.
It's turned into a flower bed.
As your economic development person, we need to give the money back to KaBoom.
We're gonna get the water from your house, your house. No water in the water fountain. No wood in the water fountain.
I think they should have kept it a water fountain because it helps the world.
And so my primary focus is to take the grants that are open right now and move them so that way we don't have to send money back and we can show funders that we are working hard to build out a program here that has the level of efficacy and responsibility to handle their money the way that we say that we will, so that they can trust us as managed and this project implementation to show them, look what we've done, but if we had X,
Right.
imagine.
Bingo.
To dream with them.
Yep.
And for them to know that their money is in good hands.
Yep.
But what I can't do is sit on grants that have been open for 2 to 3 years and say I need more money because this was mishandled.
Right. Sure.
So this KaBoom grant, has its own many onion layers of complexities. But my main objective is to do what we said we would do, and show them that we're able to deliver on all of the various pieces of our grant agreement. And it sounds like the first step in that is to get an understanding from you of who the partners are that we need to bring back to the table. Arrange for that to happen. Walk through the particulars of this is how much money we have and this is the time frame in which we have to execute this. To dream big, but to dream within our means, not overpromise and underdeliver.
Sure.
And then, really execute. And the city is prepared, and everyone understands that all of the labor and all of the resources of the city will be in kind into this project because it has been sitting here for so long. In my eyes, the fact that the city has not executed or worked on this is unacceptable. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think some key next steps and takeaways are you guys have done an extreme amount of work on this, and I did not know this existed, and I'm so sorry that I didn't.
Not to worry.
Some guidance on who we should bring back to the table to make sure everyone's voice is heard with this project, and kind of do some what I call a cruddle to get back to all of these creative pieces, and then set some expectations that this is how much money we have, this is the time frame we have to do this, and here's the reality of this space. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you'll can you share with us what you have so that we can work from that?
Yes, I can share my screen. What I have is for final Play Everywhere grant application. I have some invoices for some drums that were installed that were not allocated to the grant.
Yeah, what was the number? Do you recall the number on that?
I believe it was somewhere to the tune of a couple $1,000, but that was not applied to this grant, and because it was so long ago,
Good.
We are not considering that an expenditure to this fund.
Good.
This question will also be for both candidates, and this time you will have 2 minutes to respond. The next mayor will take helm of a new public-private partnership for the Pontiac Phoenix Center. What are your thoughts on how the city got to this point, and what is your plan for the park construction amphitheater going forward? Starting with Mr. Grimal.
Yeah. I'm the only candidate in this race who spoke out against the Phoenix Center deal when it was proposed back in November, December, and January. I sent an email to City Council and the mayor expressing my serious concerns and opposition to the approach. I also was quoted in the Detroit Free Press as raising serious concerns because I will always fight for the best interest of residents and taxpayers, and there are details in that proposal and that deal that are very troubling and put our city and its residents at risk. Having said that, it appears that that is a done deal now because of decisions made by the current administration. And number one, we've got to make sure that we're holding the new private owner of Ottawa Towers accountable for what they agreed to do under that deal. So holding them accountable to actually live up to their side of the deal, number one. And number two, we've got to make sure that we're using the amphitheater on top of the Phoenix Center to make downtown Pontiac a destination again. And that is critically important. We used to have Arts, Beats, and Eats. We used to have the Fireworks Festival. We used to have the Taste Fest, the Mexican Festival, the Puerto Rican Festival. We've got to get back to making downtown Pontiac a destination. And that means giving Pontiac residents a reason to come downtown, but it also means giving people from throughout Southeast Michigan a reason to come to Pontiac, spend their money in our community, supporting our local businesses and our jobs. And the Phoenix Center Amphitheater can be a focal point and a centerpiece of those efforts.
This question is for both candidates. Oh, I do apologize. Same question.
Same question. Let's be clear. The Oakland County Board of Commissioners voted to demolish the Phoenix Center. That is what started the litigation that ended up in the public-private partnership that cost the city of Pontiac close to $20 million. Had that not happened, we would not be having this conversation today. And for far too long, Pontiac continues to get the short end of the stick, and we continue to give corporate welfare and subsidies to businesses within this community that do not benefit the residents of the city of Pontiac. My opponent served on the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. My opponent served as the House Minority Leader for the Michigan House of Representatives. During that period, while he served in the House, he voted in favor for every public subsidy, a total of $1.4 billion in subsidy for corporate interests. When you say you want to prioritize the people and the people of Pontiac, let the record reflect. And I noticed that there are several members of the media here. I hope that after this debate, they go back and they check the record to determine the value, the significance, and the transparency of what was stated this evening.
Okay, this question will be for both candidates. The City of Pontiac is receiving $37.7 million in American Rescue Plan funding. What would be your comprehensive plan for those funds? Starting with Mr. Grimer.
Yeah, this is really a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We have $37.5 roughly million coming to our city. That's almost as much as the city's annual budget. And so this can be a truly transformational moment for our community. And I don't think that the mayor developing proposals in a silo is the right approach. We've got to solicit community input. We've got to work with council and get their input, and through a collaborative process, develop a plan and a proposal. There are federal limits on how these dollars can be spent. We can spend them on underground infrastructure. We can spend them on cyber infrastructure. We can spend them on health promotion activities, which might creatively include recreation, which is my #1 priority. And we can spend it on ways to ameliorate and address people and businesses who have suffered hardship, which means it's an opportunity for us to invest in our people and invest in our local businesses. I'm committed to doing that.
Ms. Riley.
I think it's important to note that it is a one-time payment that was issued to the city of Pontiac in light of a public health crisis. But we were originally slated to receive $5 million because of the decision in the past of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners to outsource our CDBG program. One of the very first things I plan on doing is bringing that back in-house. And I want to give recognition to our federal legislators and our state representative, Brenda Carter, for their work in getting that funding back to Pontiac, $37.7 million instead of $5 million. How many small business owners do we have in this city, in this crowd? How many small business owners have received support from the local government? One thing that COVID did reveal is that there are systematic issues within communities of color having access to opportunities. I think that the work for the $37.7 million needs to make a direct impact in our community and building up small business and preventing public health outbreaks.
That's time.
Everybody, hello everybody. I am live here at the Bowen Senior Center in Pontiac, Michigan, where the council meeting has been scheduled to take place today. I'm going to flip this over because I'm going to the door. This one is locked, so we're going to go down the stairs. Follow me. So in the history of being a council person, there's never been an incident where we haven't been able to meet, even during emergency manager, because of people having the doors locked. So I'm live here at the Bowen Center. They're redoing the parking lot.
The other side of that is that is not taking place. It's not even a talking point in education. Just for instance, education. If Drayton has the greatest idea in the world for education, 5 years for peer review, 5 years first professor cohort, 5 years first cohort pushed out into the world. That's 15 years. Do you think we can wait 15 years? We need funding to expand this platform.
To scale it.
To scale it. Right now it functions as it is, but it needs to scale. And we want to scale it across K-12 education. I know the governor would be interested in having a platform that's scaled across K-12 education on behalf of mobility. would be thrilled. And if we took and said, okay, we're going to use Michigan STEM Partnership as the vehicle for that scaling, because they're doing so much and have been doing so much for the last decade. You know, we weren't teaching science 10 years ago. It blew my mind. I was the director of the Math Hubert Observatory in Lake Angeles here, of a solar observatory that was the first solar observatory to shoot motion pictures of the sun and the moon in the world in the 1920s, and it had been forgotten. So I was going to turn it into an informal science center, and I went out to K-12 education. I said, I have this observatory, and I'd like to make an informal science center out of it. Is there any interest? And they went, we don't do science. We don't do science. I get, you know, the willies just thinking about it. And that's how STEM came into fashion, is because people started to realize that science was pretty important, and that a teacher in English language arts probably wasn't the ideal candidate to be teaching science. So we have in mind here, just before we close out of here, some kind of demonstration on Saginaw Street, which is our main drag here in downtown Pontiac. And downtown Pontiac is surrounded by the Loop, and it's a 6x9 street matrix, which is just like the super block for Barcelona. So we're thinking of locking it down a bit and running a shuttle from the Phoenix Center to the other end of town, which is about 6 blocks, and letting the shuttle demonstrate how it can move people versus cars.
That's something that you can like easily go through.
See, that's
okay. Yeah,
there we go.
Was an on-demand transit service. I guess that's what I'm trying to clarify.
That's what it was. It was an old service that got disbanded by the emergency financial manager.
Okay.
So when the mayor, having run successfully, was elected, she was approached by SMART to restart the program. And of course that would be good for the mayor. And that would be good for SMART. But between the two of them, they had no idea how to engage the community. And that's why they were so interested in what we were doing, because they recognized that we were engaging the community. So we offered to facilitate the design charrettes for the community engagement.
Oh, okay. So I think I'm getting it. So
Okay.
So they'd already decided they wanted to reinstate the program.
Right.
And then they turned to you all to kind of do the community engagement.
We proposed that we would provide that to facilitate that.
Okay.
Because we recognized neither one of them could, nor should,
So
actually.
you're saying that the mayor or someone representing the mayor attended the transit talks, and then also
The transit talks were,
participating in stop?
yes,
Okay.
they were in all the meetings.
In all the meetings.
Yes, because this was a combination between SMART and the mayor. And she sent her people to make sure that that's how it was going to be. Now, they never imagined they were going to encounter the process that we put forth, the design charrettes. Tom's last name?
Kimball.
Tom Kimball said to me, our community, Jim, would not know what a design charrette is.
Yeah.
Right. I said, Tom, your community's smarter than you think. And certainly smarter
than you.
So smarter than you, okay? So drop the bullshit, okay?
Yeah, it was so offensive. It was like those kind of attitudes, we find them often in both our, community leadership and agencies that come. It's like you can't go talking to community in this
They're
language
elitist.
or whatever. We have never, when we're in open conversation with community, we've never had a community member say, I don't understand. And if they do, they'll look it up or whatever.
Okay.
Also adding some of the attributes, right? You're kind of describing. So are you saying transaction? Is that another descriptor of the partnership program? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we're we're learning as we go along too, how people behave, social public entities, how they behave in relationship to design thinking. And we did all of this generative community engagement work that got it to the point where this transaction was going to be taking place, and you would think that they'd be interested in keeping that alive and using all of that data that we collected, which we can show you we digitized everything and show you multiple boards and archives of sticky notes of community and all kinds of stuff. But to them, it was just a transaction, and it didn't even produce a program.
Well, actually,
Can you talk a little bit more about that? What do you mean it was just a transaction? Maybe capture that.
Like there's difference between, as designers, we're interested in the what. So that's why we're interested in the community and the programming, and you want to make a good program, and you find out along the way that others are focused only on the money and the exchange and the transaction, and that's what their outcome was.
Capitalism 101.
So would you say that the transit talks, how would you describe the flow? So it informed, did it maybe like generate excitement, or? Very
much so. Everybody in that room was excited by that conversation and by the process that regardless of whether it was at the community level or down at 5,000 entrepreneurs, or during city council meetings, or during SMART program elements that we co-developed with SMART. Very interested folks, because they recognized, regardless of the fact that it was Pontiac inspired, they recognized the value of it. And they wanted to be part of it, or they wanted to contribute, or they wanted to benefit from it. So it was all very powerful, and it's unfortunate that the mayor just became, a devout authoritarian and thought, well, now that we have the dollars generated, let's do something else with them, as opposed to applying them to what was developed.
But also, I guess, and maybe this is, it's hard for you, maybe you all can't answer this question, but what do you think, what benefit in terms of, and maybe it's like being able to hear from the public or getting ideas from the public that then inform the CPP, what do you think the motivation or the advantage of the mayor and Smart Bus leadership attending the 5 transit talks were? So the mayor and the Smart leadership attended the transit talks. Is there another way to kind of
agreed? They agreed. No, they agreed to the program.
So let me ask you this. So then, as part, and I'm talking about the 5 transit talks that happened in the spring of 2017, what was the objective of those? To get feedback? Was it to educate the public about the community partnership program, or to get ideas from them about what they'd like to see from that service, or ideas for route locations, that kind of thing?
All of it.
All of it.
All of it. They're the experts.
And to establish our advocacy, we're designers. So when we come up, if we've taken in data over time and have a good idea from that data, we're sticking to it. And so our advocacy was around a reinvented community partnership program that was open source design.
And that was self-organizing, self-funding, and self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
Because it's the community who's running it. The Freedom Road people were community members.
And the Time Bank were community members.
They're all community.
And the students at ITA were community members. And the PIREC.
Again, the city had no capacity to monitor nor run the program.
Yeah, there's only 30 people, so they don't.
At that time, it was 30 people. Guess what? Here we move forward, 30 people. You see how you stay in power is you don't have a crew. That way, you're in charge.
That's what autocrats do. Donald Trump ran the United States with 12 people.
They're not real attractors of
Well, I mean, they're not intending to attract. They're in charge. They're the ones that make all the decisions. Of course, not much can come from something so small. And Donald Trump is proof of it. I mean, you talk about small-minded, my God. It was much the same in this particular exercise. And Smart was okay with that. And why would that be? Well, it's Oakland County and Brooks-Patterson land. And Pontiac is, you know, his weakness. And he intentionally destroyed this place. He was on the wrong side of busing as an attorney. That's how he got his start in politics. And he ended his life on the wrong side of transportation.
Just suggested we should represent in the thing.
Okay.
And so the transit talks was our combination of something, but that was for the people out of this whole, I mean, because this thing was all top heavy. And us, you know, it was a miracle our advocacy for transit talks even saw the light of day.
Are you speaking when we went down to Detroit as well as part of that?
Yeah, the transit talks was the 5 series we did.
Right.
We did Detroit Startup Week and the schools.
When we did Detroit Startup Week, there were 5,000 entrepreneurs there from Detroit and the surrounding community. And the conversation and the amount of data that we brought and put up on the walls and everything was so compelling. People were going, "Oh my God, there's just so much here to know about. We need to do a conference just on this." And so fast forward 3 or 4 years, and that's exactly what is happening. And not because of anything that was done, but because of the things that weren't done that now are so compelling, made so obvious by the pandemic and the resultant outcomes from the pandemic, to put the focus back on transportation. Because through this whole thing, we've been transportation advocates, but no one was really interested in transportation. And now they've become interested in transportation. And I think it's really interesting, now that they're interested, the game has shifted. It's not regional transportation anymore.
That's a good point, Jim. So who at that time, this was done to inform the regional transit process,
absolutely.
right? So who, like which entity would represent kind of the decision maker
Right.
in this?
They've been attempting to pass regional transportation, and the only thing holding regional transportation from being passed was Oakland County.
Okay.
Because Oakland County, through Smart Bus, wanted to own regional transportation.
So then would Oakland County be kind of a standalone entity?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And now they have expanded to cover some of Detroit, but this was the war that was going on between the mayor in Detroit, Coleman Young, and Brooks Patterson in rich Oakland County. Remember, Oakland County was the 5th or 10th richest county in the country.
In the country, right? Yeah.
And so, you know, anything on the other side of 8 Mile Road was Oakland County, and anything on the other side of 8 Mile Road was Detroit, okay? And they were happy having this confrontation, which was to the detriment of the region. And in fact still is, because old habits die really hard, you know?
True. Yeah.
And we're going to be the culture that has to be eliminated, and it's going to be eliminated because the world is just too rich and big a place now and too tightly tied to be anything less than positive and value creation. If you're not doing that work, then you're on the other side of the equation. You're not going to be successful. And that's what we're living right now. Is Detroit going to be able to break the cultural barrier that had been adhered to? because Oakland County allowed all of that wealth to come to the suburb, and they never gave anything back. And then the movement back to cities by 3 billion people has just exacerbated that whole flat platform. And we're right in the throes of, and Dan Gilbert of Rock Ventures has probably spent a couple of $2 billion to attempt to bring Detroit back to some kind of semblance of equity. He kind of did it backwards. He should have been in the community. He's just put up $500 million to go into the community some 4 years after he began, to recognize that, gee, even if we had it downtown, without strong communities, we don't really have a strong downtown. So just think of how backward that was, and yet he was playing into a hand that was dealt by Brooks Patterson and Oakland County. And you get some sense of how vast this problem is.
Let me just explain really quick how so you know when you go to it. This top, I put the Pontiac Community Partnership Program, not connected. That was the #1 thing Madonna from Smart Bus was trying to get put back on the books because it had been slashed by the emergency manager. When emergency management came in, he just started cutting.
And that's all hyper-local transportation. That's at the core of our community.
And that was something the community cared about. They pick up for groceries, and someone from the community ran the program, and but he just cut it. This is $140,000, and Smart Bus paid for it. I think it's federally subsidized, and he's just an idiot. They're just also hostile to transit. They see it and they feel like they got some power. They're going to cut something like that. And so the emergency manager and Brooks Patterson were hand in glove. Just lockstep. And so this circle here, and then we told you how Mayor Waterman wasn't much better. She got the money. We ended up getting the money passed. And once it got transferred in the city coffers in 2017, no program, never.
So when you collected data from the public on how to potentially reinvent the community partnership program, did you all hand that over to Smart Bus?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. They were part of it. We got together, these 13 meetings and the community meetings. It was all run under our process. Everybody participated.
Got it.
And it all got chronicled.
And the sticky notes are all digitized, everything. And then a lot of times people want.
The stock committee had access. Everyone had access.
Everybody had access.
Everyone had access 24/7. And the #1 thing that we were not going to do is take a design thinking process and convert it into an old stale process. Well, can you make an Excel sheet of all of these sticky notes? No,
we're not doing that.
It's like, no, this is a design thinking process. Design thinking is supposed to be about action.
We originally were going to do 3 charrettes.
You can move on ideas. You don't have to.
This is how powerful it was. 13 meetings. It was originally going to be 3 charrettes.
And so then the meetings were about
community. The meetings were about community. The meetings were about informing Smart.
Was this staff able to make any headway in actually gearing up to operate?
Yeah, we had 13.
Was the money reallocated before that?
No,
yeah, they were all geared up, and we had Freedom Road. That's when we went to Startup Week.
We were operating here. We were operating here.
And we were operating here, and the mayor got in front of it.
The mayor was threatened, okay, but she didn't think much of the threat because, well, these guys will go away. She's an autocrat, so these guys will go away. They don't count, okay, but the truth is she's the one that's going away.
Yeah, so it has to be viewed it has to be viewed within an authoritarian context. We're
Like
not
regime.
Absolutely.
It really
does.
It's a really interesting scenario.
Design thinking and more so open design and co-design processes really get at the root of some deeper political problems, and just watching how people respond, you know, either from a strictly technocratic position of not wanting to hear anything from the community, or from the more authoritarian.
You know, here we are in this moment, we're witnessing the greatest accumulation of wealth being distributed in the history of the United States to community members. And our administration, and it's now, you know, a new administration about to overcome the failure of the previous administration, holds town halls. Several people show up to fill out several sticky notes to signal that they have vested an interest in the community. Yet in that engagement, they sat behind a table and told the community members whom are going to be charged with determining how that money is going to be spent and distributed and how it's going to be valued. And they, behind the table, were telling them how they were going to be spending their money. It was so incredible, you know. It's like a picture's worth 1,000 words, okay? And they outnumbered the people in the community. You know, imagine that you have 8 districts in a town of 60,000, and the word was out, and they outnumbered the amount of people that showed up from one of the districts. In total, they will have less than 100 sticky notes for $37.4 million.
That's crazy.
It is insane. And then this is happening all over the country, okay? And the most important thing in my mind is that the community needs to know this one fact. This money does not have to be spent tomorrow.
Right.
It doesn't have to be spent next year. That they have 3 or 4 years to do the work.
And so you can take the time to think about how, be really thoughtful about how it's spent.
So simple.
So then, Monica, I'm wondering, would you want to have the public as another circle, another entity?
Yeah, absolutely. The most important circle.
Yeah, that's more like when.
This is the lesson that's going to be learned in this exercise. You know, I was laughing so hard at the picture that I was witnessing of this town hall. And I was laughing and crying at the same time because they just don't understand. The age of we're in charge, we'll let you know what we're going to do for you is so over. The experts that we're talking about are not at the administration. They're in the community. And the quicker we recognize who the experts are and why they're the experts, they're not only the people who need this opportunity the most, they are also the people who own it. It's them as taxpayers are the reason we're getting money. We're not just getting money largesse.
Right, it wasn't like
it's representational.
for the government.
It's such a lesson in government right now that even Joe Biden understands.
You're in the sunny section, so section S, yes. As Megan mentioned, you know, public transit is by design a green mode of transportation because it's moving a lot of people around on fewer vehicles instead of a single occupant or driver vehicle. And so that's something that kind of sets a nice base for us. But that doesn't mean we have to stop there. Obviously, there's lots of opportunities for us to play an even bigger part when it comes to helping to combat climate change, reduce emissions. So one of our older examples of that is actually our connector fleet. So we've got 120 of these vehicles that are behind me that we've transitioned 100% to propane. Of course, propane is still...
Jim, I want to turn it over to you. I see you've got a great question in the chat. Why don't you, if we can unmute you, and if not, I will read it. Well, I'll go ahead and read it in the interest of time, and this will probably be our last question. So Jim says, oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead. Go ahead with the question.
Thank you. I was just wondering, you know, learning is an interesting way to go about things. And I'm wondering if we can learn things from our past successes. And I'm thinking around the 80s and the 90s and a bit after 2000 before the recession. Any thoughts going forward on how we bring those kind of opportunities back into being in terms of the tech sector, and more importantly, how that reflects on the work from home and learn from home process?
Yeah, Sophie, you know, it's a great question. I actually think that there's even some more recent learnings. When we looked at the Paycheck Protection Program last year in Philadelphia, the first round obviously did not serve Black and brown businesses because they did not have the kind of banking relationships that are absolutely necessary to navigate what was a complicated, chaotic period. By the last round, what was built in Philadelphia, which is a very rich set of practitioners, not just CDFIs, but entrepreneurial support organizations led by the Enterprise Center in West Philly, conventional banks, fintech firms, all of it was a network that was able to basically bring Black and brown businesses into the fold, help them navigate access to PPP, route them to lenders who could help them access the funding. And the entire state of Pennsylvania went from like 13th in PPP to 6th, in part because of just like this surge of activity in Philadelphia. And so this network effect, this ecosystem, the last mile, so that you can connect into socially and economically disadvantaged individuals or very small firms, is going to be fundamental. It doesn't exist everywhere in the United States. We don't have CDFIs covering the ground everywhere. So we're going to have to quickly, you know, rapidly set up these kind of networks, you know, using what we have. So I think that's the promise of this moment. It's going to catalyze some remarkable innovation because the funding is there. You know, funding is not the problem. Capital is not the problem. It's how we organize to basically have it, you know, achieve the biggest outcomes.
Hear, hear. How do we best connect to the citizenry that for the most part, I think in this particular moment is the most important part, as you point out? How do we inform that baseline citizenry, which has never experienced anything like this, and yet is the focal point of this funding?
Well, I think we're going to have to go to where they are. I mean, I do think in the health sector, you know, what's remarkable about the last year, whether it was around testing or whether it was around vaccinations or whether it was around general health disparities, hospitals, care providers got out of their fortresses and went into communities. I mean, Detroit, I mean, you know, the Phoenix Project has had this, you know, mobile sort of labs moving around the city. Go to where the people are, go to where the entrepreneurs are. And I think that's really the promise of this moment. You know, and I do think it's going to require a different kind of mindset, you know, of a lot of our service programs where folks sit back and wait for the demand. We're going to have to go find the demand.
Yep, the citizens are the experts now.
Yeah,
and we have to find a ways to raise their voice.
And welcome everyone to World City. Welcome to the New York stage. I'm thrilled to be here today to be in conversation with Vishaan Chakrabarty. Vishaan is an architect and author, creative director of the Practice for Architecture and Urbanism. He's one of the leading voices in our industry today that folks like me and our colleagues turn to when we really want to know what's happening around the world and what a vision for our cities will be going forward, especially in an era post this pandemic. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome Vishaan to the stage. Vishaan's going to share with us his vision for a post-pandemic city, and then we'll have a conversation. Vishaan?
Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris. It's so nice to be here. So when we talk about a post-pandemic city, I think one of the first questions we need to answer, because there was a big question mark when the pandemic really brought down everything to bear on us, was that will cities survive? Will densities survive? And we've seen data already that in the United States that cities are doing well, but it depends on which city you talk about. We've seen outmigration from big, expensive cities like San Francisco, but we've seen a huge uptick in population in what we used to call second-tier cities, smaller cities. And in that is a clue about what people are seeking. I think as we think about cities going forward and policy, what we build, what we design, leadership, I think, needs to think about cities a little bit differently. Every mayor around the world used to say, jobs, jobs, jobs. That was their mantra as they ran for office. I would argue that today we need to talk about jobs, justice, and joy. The notion that not only do we need a healthy economy in our cities, but we need equity and ecology, things that represent justice, and we need great experience that gives us human joy, because with remote work here to stay, cities really need to be designed for the people who are dedicated to them, who love them and want to stay in them and have great lives in the city. I think that has to start with questioning the role of the private automobile in our cities. It's a basic equity issue. If you want to move 50 people across a city, the amount of space that 50 individual cars need, regardless of whether they're electric or autonomous or Uber or whatever the technology is, versus how much space 50 bikes or 50 pedestrians or 50 people in a bus take, our cities just don't have the room. It's not equitable to distribute that space to cars. And this is, in the 20th century, completely changed our notion of even what a street is. These two images are showing side by side at the same scale, a highway interchange in Los Angeles and the entire historic district of Florence. We used to know how to build streets and public spaces for people. But then what happened is, at the end of the 19th century, three major inventions that came out of the Industrial Revolution, the elevator, structural steel, and the internal combustion engine, completely transformed our landscape overnight. By mid-century, in the 1950s, we passed the Federal Highway Act, the largest piece of infrastructure that was ever passed in the United States government, save for what's being debated right now in Washington, which extended highways across the United States, suburbanized the country, led to a lot of racial segregation, and created a lot of the problems that we're still living with today, including the fact that we are one of the biggest carbon producers in the world. And I think we really need to think, if we're going to think about post-pandemic, that the pandemic was an appetizer for what climate change will bring. The pandemic is just a hint at what worldwide turmoil will get created if we don't address this problem. And what we know is that that auto-oriented landscape that we created, not just in the United States, but around the world, is leading to a massive amount of carbon consumption, as opposed to living in more dense circumstances.